Good morning and welcome to another amazing Saturday. As you get tuned in this morning, go ahead and put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Taking a drink of the Go Juice this morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to this Saturday, September 10th, 2022. We're well into the month of September already. It has been an amazing, I don't know what you would call it, I guess, a memorable week worldwide this week, obviously, with all that has been happening across the pond. It's interesting if you've been following my Facebook at all in the last week. You know that my wife, Carol, my daughter, Shalane, have actually been on a little bit of a holiday, a special vacation celebrating Shalane's recent master's degree in the UK, in Scotland, and in England this last week, and somewhat eyewitnesses to history as all that has been going on with the passing of Queen Elizabeth and the ascension to the throne of King Charles III. Anyway, that aside, we are here. And if you are joining live, do what I see several of you doing right now. Make sure you say hello in the comments and be a part of our conversation today. Corey Ann, good to see you. Dee Dee, ahoy. Yes. Oh, it's your 34th anniversary today. Thank you for letting us know that, Dee Dee, because as you know, I like to point out any special days that are going on. So congratulations on your 34th anniversary as you celebrate that. Kathy Glavin. Hello, Kathy. Good to see you here. Georgie Dwyer, good morning. I see people are tuning in. If you are tuning in, do what these folks are doing. Make sure you say hello in the chat. Make sure that you participate in the conversation once we really get going with our topic today. But just be a part of this. I'm talking out loud, but think of this as all of us sitting around our virtual digital coffee table. And I hope you have your coffee with you. Shalane is not going to be here today to say everybody drink, so I'm just going to trust you to do it. Alan McCormick, good morning. Oh, great shirt, Dee Dee says. Thank you. I don't do this every week, but I have a number of this is going to come as a huge surprise to you. I have several shirts that are coffee-themed shirts. You can't see it right now, but my socks and my shoes are also coffee-themed. So I just have to get into the mode, friends. What can I tell you? All right, listen, I want to get to our topic today and our guests. So let me get to some special days that I put up here, found online. Tomorrow, the 11th of September, is obviously it's Remembrance Day. This is the day that we think back 21 years ago now to 9/11/2001. And it's a day that has been turned into a time of not only remembering and acknowledging the events of that day, but in many places also a day of service in conjunction with that. September 11th is also, this is always the first Sunday after Labor Day, is Grandparents' Day. I'm a grandparent, so I'm going to point that out. Some of you on here are as well. It's the day that our grandkids are supposed to acknowledge and celebrate us. And I'm all in favor of that if they want to celebrate me in some way. It's also Make Your Bed Day on September 11th. I make my bed every day. I just do. It's something I do that kind of helps me feel like I'm bringing order to my life. But I do make my bed every day. But apparently, if you don't do it any other time, you should do it tomorrow. And then, wow, this one seems relevant in light of this week. September 11th is also No News is Good News Day. I don't know if that came about because of the events of 9/11/2001 or if it was something that was already in place. But this has certainly been a momentous week. And so no news is potentially good news. The 12th of September, Monday, is Chocolate Milkshake Day. I love chocolate milkshakes. I have to be careful how much of that I partake of, both from the standpoint of the calories and also just sometimes my body doesn't react that well to dairy. It just depends. And then it's also National Video Game Day. It's one of those national days that was never an official like congressional or presidential proclamation, but they just call it National Video Game Day. So if you're into your video games, apparently on Monday, it's a day that you can celebrate and play those like you're not doing it any other time, right? I know better. Wednesday, the 14th is National Cream-Filled Donut Day. Are you a cream-filled donut fan? If so, what kind of cream-filled donuts do you like? There are a variety of filled donuts out there, some jelly-filled, some cream-filled. Apparently, it is National Cream-Filled Donut Day, and it really is a day that somehow has some kind of official recognition, apparently, as a national day. I'm not sure why. And Friday is American Legion Day. It is the anniversary of the founding of the American Legion in 1919 after World War I. It is also Mayflower Day. September 16th in the year 1620 was the date that the Mayflower set sail for the Americas. It's also Step Family Day. If you are part of a blended family or have step family members, the 16th Friday is the day to acknowledge and recognize that. And then it's also Mexican Independence Day. Some people think that Cinco de Mayo is Mexican Independence Day. It's not. It's actually in 1810, on September 16th, the Declaration of Mexico's independence. So that can be celebrated as well. And then I want to throw out a couple of happy birthdays in addition to Dee Dee's anniversary this week. But the 13th is Debbie Stout's birthday. Debbie is a regular who tunes in to Coffee Break. So Debbie, if you're out there either watching live or tune in later, happy birthday. And then on the 14th, Marie Vermeer. Marie is another one of our Adams High School alumni friends who get to keep track of on Facebook and occasionally run into at reunions. So if you tune in, Marie, happy birthday to you as well. Do you have a special day this week? Dee Dee shared her anniversary. If you've got a special day, you or a close family member, a birthday, an anniversary, or something you would like us to recognize and acknowledge here, go ahead and put it out there. In the meantime, I got to glance here and see who was tuned in since I was last looking at our chat. And I see Kathy Garlick. Good morning, Kathy. Kathy McCormick. The Kathys are all here. Carla is on here. Good morning, Carla. Scott is on here. Good morning, Scott. Rick, good morning. And if I have not said hello to you, it's either because I just missed you tuning in or maybe you haven't said hi yet. Make sure you do in the chat. All right, listen, I've kind of rushed through. Oh, I like that too. I'm just glancing at Corey Ann talking about cream-filled Bismarcks. We were talking about the cream-filled donuts. Okay, now all of a sudden I've got a craving. Listen, I want to get to our topic today and introduce our guest because I think if you've tuned into Coffee Breaks in the past, sorry, doing this, you're aware that I don't know how to word this exactly. I wouldn't say I avoid controversy on the show. I don't delve into things to deliberately spark controversy. You're not going to hear me talk a lot about politics. You're not going to hear me talk. I share my faith, but you're not going to hear me delve on or bring the Bible up here and pound on religion. You're not going to hear me talk about things that might create tension or negativity. But there are times when I think we need to address things, acknowledge things, and have conversations about things that are relevant and that we need to not let drift into the past because we've kind of gotten past the hype or gotten past the peak. And I became aware recently of a new documentary that is starting to make the rounds with some of the film festivals. And I became aware of that because of a dear friend who is a co-producer of this documentary film and is in the film interviewing many of the key people. And the film itself is called Tipping Point, and it was filmed in Portland, Oregon, which is my hometown. And during protests that rose up in the wake of the death of George Floyd. And to me, it hit a real note of we need to talk about this, partially because it is one of those situations where I think we need to not let what happened and the aftermath of that drift into obscurity. And because of, as I read about it, as I looked at the trailer, how they put this documentary together, I thought was very meaningful. So before I get any further into it, I want to introduce our guest who's going to be able to really share from a firsthand perspective more about this. Julianne Johnson-Weiss is a professor and director of vocal music at Portland Community College. During her remarkable 30 plus years as a performer, and I can attest, let me just step in here, that her talent and her ability went well before her professional work in this area. But Julianne has entertained audiences on Broadway, on cruise ships in the demilitarized zone in Korea, the French Riviera, and other international venues. She is an acclaimed singer, actress, director, and producer, and has deep roots as an educator and artist in residence. She's also a licensed minister and is certified with Montessori International. Her service in the community, I'm just going to share a few of the things that she is currently or has been involved in. But advisory board at the Salvation Army USA, National Alumni Board, University of Portland, Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church, Portland Community College, Sylvania Arts, Performance and Design. Already mentioned, professor, director of vocal music, Portland Community College, and board president and associate artistic director at Stumptown Stages in Portland. I almost ran out of breath just trying to talk about all of that, but just an extraordinary person who speaks with a voice of passion about so many things. And so it is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you Julianne Johnson and bring her into the fray. Julianne, did I cover
Hi. Oh my
cover
God.
Efficiently?
Yada, yada, yada. That's what everybody has a lengthy, dossier of things that they've done. And, if you've lived long enough, that just means I'm old.
Yeah, I know. You notice I don't share mine.
I know, because you're amazing.
And older than you. So, we'll leave it at that. But Julianne, you caught my attention. I mean, you've kept my attention over the years from the time that we were doing things on stage together.
Yes.
And a few years back. But since then, all of the things, and we mentioned a few of them, and I did that not so much to blow smoke or to pat you on the back, as much as just to bring attention to the reality that your involvement in the community, your involvement on the world stage, literally and figuratively, gives you, I think, a unique perspective on so many things that touch us from a social standpoint. And it's not that when Tipping Point became a reality, you all of a sudden decided this would be a good time to start to think about community and start to think about social issues. It's been a part of your DNA.
Right.
So can you tell us, I've mentioned a little bit about Tipping Point, about this film, but can you tell us maybe in your own words, just a little bit about the film, maybe a brief synopsis? What's it about? What is Tipping Point?
Tipping Point is a perspective of the protests that capture moments that you probably couldn't see in the sound bites that you were getting on the news. It gives you a real-time perspective, and it's from a young filmmaker who, the director is a young filmmaker.
John Meyer.
He's amazing, though. He's accomplished. He's already done he did music videos, which was his focus at the time, but he really is key to us getting and capturing the information that we needed in order to do this broad stroke perspective of what was happening at the protests. And also being innovative enough to capture things from above, not just pushing through the crowd, which can look very, very chaotic, but also taking his own health, and those challenges from being down there with the tear gas and the pepper sprays and the bear spray that was brought in by the Proud Boys and all of that stuff. He was willing, because he felt so deeply that this was an important message we needed to get out. As true to a documentary, we are trying to give you an idea of what was happening, but not editorialize. We don't want to come from one side or the other. Okay. We don't, just because of the nature of what the protest was about, you will hear people speaking about their political standpoint, about what they think is happening in Portland. And we also have some people who have come on and just are talking about basically about living in Portland since the 40s.
Wow.
And coming from the left and the right.
Mhm.
a lifelong Republican African American woman that came here in 42, and a lifelong Democrat that came African American person that came here in the 40s. And they're in the neighborhoods where the protests were happening
Yeah.
also. So what I'm trying to say to you is that you will probably find yourself in one of these interviews.
Oh,
Just so you will see a glimpse of maybe what you feel, and it will challenge some of the things that we assumed about what was happening in the protest too. So it's a for me at my and I speak, I'm not much on ageism, but I will say that it is a present in our current society. So what I had, the challenge for me was to decide what was my place in this.
yeah.
Of course, I wanted to run down there and protest and everything because I come from a family who had a lot of these racial challenges that were going on in their lives all the way through from the time they moved from Texas to coming to Portland in
Yeah.
44.
Wow.
So, and living in Vanport and going through
Yeah.
all of that.
I
And
thought I
then,
recalled that there was a connection to Vanport, and I'm not going to go
yeah,
into that right
yeah,
here. But
yeah,
if anybody who wants to, who is not from Portland and maybe doesn't know that history,
yeah,
do a Google search on Vanport, the Vanport flood, and some of the
yeah.
other history surrounding that area of Portland in that era.
Oh, yeah, and we certainly have. That was my first documentary that I did, which was called Grandma Zula's
Mm.
Legacy. And it is about that whole thing. But really, with Tipping Point, what we're trying to do is just give people more information so that you can arrive at an understanding of what your place is in all of this and what you can do you know
Interesting.
um because it really hopefully it'll challenge people to decide that they want to figure out something they can do to improve our beloved Portland that was so beleaguered with everything that happened. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it's hard, but we have growing pains. We're going through growing pains too.
Always.
Mhm.
Julianne, you mentioned our beloved Portland, and yet,
Mhm.
there's so many people even watching here today who aren't from Portland. They're not in Portland. They don't. But part of the power of this documentary and
Mhm.
the things that transpired in Portland that this
Mhm.
documentary captures impacted the world stage. I mean,
Yes, it did.
Portland became a magnifying glass area, a focal point for so much of what was happening. And I think that's relevant for people to know. You mentioned also you kind of trying to find your place in this, but you have a very specific role, both as a co-producer, but within
Mhm.
this film as interviewer. In addition to the film footage that John Meyer shot in the midst of the protests, there are, as you mentioned, these times of talking to people, and that
Mhm.
was part of your role, was to conduct those interviews. What was that like?
Emotional. Um, it was eye-opening, revealing about where I stood, in certain things. But it was also cathartic.
Mhm.
It was like seeing all these people who care enough to step out and try to help, try to change the narrative as far as race is concerned here in Portland, try to um, support those who were protesting. I mean, I
Mhm.
think about the moms that came out,
Yes.
en masse, just to be there and support. Um, I think about the Native American community who came forward to do prayers. See, these are things that you didn't see in the news, but
Right.
they came every night, probably about 10 nights into the protest. They came every night and they did
Mhm.
prayers right at the beginning. So between about, I don't know, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon to about 9 o'clock at night, people were just coming to do what they do in order to show solidarity and support
Yeah.
and and to witness. There was a
Mhm.
lot of witnessing, which I think is the difference between some of the things that have happened before. That's what made George Floyd, which was the impetus for all of this. That's what made um, his snuffing out of his life um, so impactful, is that all of a sudden we all witnessed it. And the second thing that goes along with that is we were in the pandemic. So we
Right.
all were moving slow enough to witness, and that when we're put on pause by a pandemic, that opened us up to observing more and seeing more. And it really, I think, our film, the protest, all those things that happened wouldn't have been as impactful if we had not been in the pandemic. So it was a perfect
Yeah.
storm for us to have an awakening.
This is, I don't know that you've got a good answer for this, but I mean,
Probably
you're a point. Well, maybe we'll just sort of cogitate on this a
Yes,
little bit
yes,
between us. But
yeah.
I've wondered, and we've seen this at times in the past in other settings, why Portland, of all places, would become, so pivotal through this. What was it? I mean, beyond the fact that John Mayer was there to capture it, we already knew through what the news was providing that Portland was a flashpoint. Portland was a focal point. And I wonder what it is about Portland as a city, because it's not Los Angeles, it's not New York, it's not Chicago, it's not Detroit, it's not Houston, it's not one of the huge metropolitan areas, not even Seattle. That is this huge focal point. We don't hear about Portland in the news that much, but yet there seems to be something about the city and its character and its makeup and its history that makes it something of a place where this kind of, as I said before, magnifying glass, it's not just how it gets looked at, it's the fact that it's happening there. And I wonder what it is about Portland that puts it in that unique place.
Well, I think from a historical standpoint, a river runs through it. That river has divided and has really made it difficult for people to exist and coexist in certain neighborhoods, and yet we do.
Yeah.
And yet you and I mean, we wouldn't even be friends if I hadn't gone to the neighborhood school, which was really based on us moving because of busing, and I wanted to go to a certain school, right? So there's this tenacity that we tend to have, that we will, no matter what, try to find one another and build community. And there's I think also, let me just say this, that we are at the forefront of a lot of things that are healthy for our society. We initiated all the bikes going through the city.
True.
We have always been conscious of our green spaces, and of everything, and just restoration of some of our older historic places. And so the positive side of who we are is we are conscious of one another. And yet there's these factions that have always been there from the original onset, which it was supposed to be just a white enclave. It was not supposed to have anybody of color in it. That river and looking at what am I going to say? Looking at Vanport and the Delta Park area and all of that, and the wiping out of a community, and yet we still figured out a way to live in the city, because this is easy living. Our climate is easy living, okay, for everyone. Look at our houseless situation. Why do they come? Because it's easy to be comfortable with nothing. I mean, we have spaces that allow for that, and yet now we have to figure out how to honor and support and uplift and give space to everyone who's here.
Mm,
And that's the hard part. That's the climb, right?
mm,
We have to figure it out. And also think, and then I'll just let it go here, but I think that we are we were teenagers, a young community. We are a city that didn't realize we were growing up.
mm.
And so we're kind of these are growing pangs, because other cities have faced atrocious things that have happened,
Yeah.
you know, eh, from killings and lynchings. I think about Minneapolis. I'm not like, oh my gosh, my niece lives there, and I get,
Yeah.
I could understand that, and we understand it in Chicago, we understand it in Detroit, we understand it in New York, we understand. But when you get to this side of the United States, they just think we're hugging trees, I
Yeah.
mean, and
Right.
in a covered wagon.
Yes. Tying our horses up when we
Yeah.
get downtown to go into the local saloon. And yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I think we just have to accept the fact that, yes, the national news did contact us and get some of our footage,
Yeah.
and they got
Wow.
it because they really needed to understand more about who we are and why did everyone come out on that bridge.
Hmm.
Why did the throngs of people come on the bridge and walk across that river and then sit down on the bridge in solidarity?
Yeah.
Why? And it's especially with 3% Black in
Right.
the community.
That's right.
I mean, so a lot of voices came out,
It
angry
transcended.
voices.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
And,
transcended on multiples. I think that was part of it,
oh
Julianne, to your
yeah,
point. And
yeah.
that's why I think that looking at this film, and I mean, let's face it, the film is raw. This is not I mean, it's
It
approaching
is
this
raw.
from an objective, unbiased, non-political perspective. But I would say if you're out there and you're going to be looking for this film and you're a parent, I would maybe look at it first and
Yes,
be prepared to discuss it with
yes,
your older kids and think
yes.
about how they should watch this. I think it's important for people to see this,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
but we just need to be transparent here and say it's not some filtered,
No,
for lack of a better term, whitewashed film
right, right,
that is
right.
going to it's going to test you. You already mentioned this. You're going to
Mm,
see yourself, but it's going to challenge you. Let me ask you this, because we are going to get short on time. We know that Tipping Point has been and is making the film festival circuit. Where is it going to be in the near future?
the Catalina Film Festival,
Okay.
which is great, and the Seattle Film Festival, the Northwest Film
Yeah,
Festival in Seattle for social justice. So
I
that
like
one
that.
is a great one. I would go to those spaces and look for Tipping Point. It's a documentary. So
Yeah.
you want to look under that listing and just sign up for it. I know the Catalina Film Festival is like $10, um, which, okay. That's a whole nother story. We do something on making money on on films, but definitely I would take advantage of the
Okay.
Seattle Film Festival. Hmm.
And I just put the link for the website to Tipping
Hmm.
Point Film in our chat here so people can go out and find it. Doesn't take that. It's not that difficult to find it. You can do a
Yeah,
Google search for Tipping Point Film and you'll run into it. There have been other movies along the years that use the words tipping points. I just want to
right,
make sure we're
right,
aiming people to the correct
right,
film.
right.
What do you think after the film festival circuit? What's the hope in terms of distribution? Is the hope that it'll get into the theatrical cycle or go to straight to like a pay-per-view or streaming service type of thing? What is the hope or expectation?
Well, of course, you always want someone to pick you up, and it would be great
Mhm.
if something like Netflix or, some platform like that would pick us up, and because it kind of goes down their alley,
Yeah, true.
as far as giving us social justice films and framework, but definitely to find a distribution uh, company through the film festivals, and also just to give it each time we do a film festival, we also got into one that's in India.
I saw that.
And it's that makes us get rise to the international level and compete against international films. So it's been great. And as long as we can keep moving forward that way, then we can actually give it momentum to get to the people that we really need to see it and to commit to helping us distribute. That's a major
Julianne,
motion picture. Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
But, who knows? Well, listen,
Mhm.
Thank you for being here today to share about this film. There's only so much we can say in the brief time we have here, but I hope it's sparked some interest among some people who might otherwise not even have heard about it. I know I am looking forward to seeing the entire film. The even going to the website and looking at the trailers and the previews is enough to really cause you to raise your eyebrows and sit up and take notice.
I also want to do a shout out. Can I do a shout out real quick?
You absolutely can.
I have to do a shout out to the Old Church. The Old Church is somewhere where I've performed for almost 30 years, and they are so much a part of us making this film happen.
That's right.
So they are executive producers, and it's really been a great
They hosted the interviews too, right? Am I correct?
Yes,
that you were able to stage the interviews there?
Yes. So
yeah, it's a wonderful. It's not only a wonderful place in downtown Portland, but it's one of those institutions that continues to have a very valid place in the life and the health of Portland as a city and as a community. Thank you for that shout out. Thank you for being here, Julianne. God bless you. And looking forward to hearing more about not only what the film will be doing, but as you continue to be out there doing all that you do. I look forward to continuing to follow your journey.
Thank you so much. I love you guys dearly and love you, Adams.
We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Take care. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you something. Julianne is, just from a personal perspective, if I can do a shout out, as one of those people who has been instrumental in speaking into my life at various times. And I think you gather that from her, that she's just a person of wonderful character. So I'm so thrilled that we were able to have her here today and have her join us for this. Just very quickly, because we are a little past 10 o'clock, I want to share some things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, and just let you know that next week we're going to have an interesting conversation. Still kind of finalizing. I think we're going to have somebody join me to have this conversation. We've talked about this briefly in the past. I think we briefly conversed on the Mandela effect a few months ago when we had a show that focused on urban legends and conspiracy theories. We're going to spend some time next week talking about this weird theory, this weird concept, the Mandela effect. If you're not familiar with it, you can look it up before next week. But it's basically talks about false memories, where something comes up in the news. It'd be like if this last week people heard that Queen Elizabeth died and said, wait a minute, I remember that she died several years ago. Why is it we're just hearing about it now? And they'll think that they're making a connection, and it'll be, if not a mass false memory, at least a group false memory. People will say, yeah, I remember it that way too. And it has to do sometimes with people in history, things, products that have come out that we remember them looking or being presented a certain way. And the conspiracy theory around the Mandela effect is that somehow there's been like a glitch in the matrix or some time travel thing that has shifted the reality. And some people remember it one way, and some people remember it another way. So we're going to have kind of a fun conversation about that next week. I will let you know that in 2 weeks, on the 24th of September, there won't be a Coffee Breaks with Steve, because I'm going to be, along with Carol and along with Shalane and Dustin, my daughter and son-in-law, we're going to be in Portland for the Portland premiere of the film All Sorts. We talked about All Sorts on here in the past. We had the screenwriter and director of All Sorts, Rick Castaneda, on here to talk about the film. And it has a very personal place for us, because it's a feature film that Shalane herself is in. So we're all going to go to that premiere and be there live and be able to enjoy that on the 24th. So you won't see us there, but we've got some great programs already in the works for October. And we will be here next week, though. So join us next week and be a part of the conversation as well. I just once again want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for kind of sticking with us as we went a little bit long today. Sometimes that's just to get all the conversation, and it's important to do that. So thank you very much. And, as we talk about the things that happen in our world, as we go back and reflect on things that, such as the topics that Tipping Point touches on, just a quick reminder that the world around us, regardless of our views, regardless of our position, regardless of our political stand or our biases in any situation, there is a world that we have influence in. We have power to do things in this world. We have a voice. We can make a difference. And so I want to remind you, as I remind you every week at the end of the show, please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week.